Alright, we are live. Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 12 of the Hockey Stories series. You may have learned once a team has a great regular season both offensively and defensively, you can expect your team to carry over that success in the playoffs. This has been the case on some years where we get to see teams who were the number one team in their respective conferences, but they went on to win the Stanley Cup. However, I decided to do things a little bit different for this episode, as today I decided to make a top 5 countdown list for the most shocking upsets in the Stanley Cup playoffs because I've heard in that case some teams were just not as successful in the playoffs having had success in the regular season. Let's begin with number 5. Coming in at number 5 is the 2000-2001 Ottawa Senators. Ottawa came in the 2001 Stanley Cup playoffs, winning their second Northeast Division title in 3 years with a fabulous record of 48, 21, and 13. In the playoffs, they were matched against the underdog Toronto Maple Leafs. The mood was completely different. Ottawa has won every single game against Toronto in the regular season, and we're meeting in the postseason for a second year in a row. Unfortunately, though, the Senators suffered numerous offensive breakdowns as they were stymied by Leafs goaltender Curtis Joseph, who stole the show in that series. In fact, Ottawa was unable to hold the lead until Game 4, in which they would eventually lose as well. Basically speaking, Toronto swept the series in a major upset instead. The only positive result from this story is that the Ottawa Senators traded disgruntled Russian superstar Alexei Yashin to the New York Islanders as part of a package deal which includes Zdeno Chara and the second overall selection in the 2001 NHL entry draft, in which they used to select winger Jason Spezza. Number 4. Coming in at number 4 is the 2005-2006 Detroit Red Wings. This was the team that was one of the favorites that was selected to win the Stanley Cup that year because with their final record of 58, 16, and 8, it is no surprise that they were the number one team in the regular season. Heading into the playoffs, their opponent was the underdog Edmonton Oilers. Many believed that the Red Wings would be no pushover. However, instead the shoe was on the other foot as the Oilers prevailed in the series in a major upset instead, and to add insult to injury, the Oilers became the first 8-seeded team to qualify for the Stanley Cup Finals, in which they would lose to the Carolina Hurricanes. It was a stunning end to a magnificent season because the Detroit Red Wings were a powerhouse team in the 1990s as well as the 2000s. I know that's unfair at the beginning, but in the end, with the way they finished, let's face it, they should have performed better. Number 3. The club that I have at number 3 is the 2009-2010 Washington Capitals. That's right, this was the team that was going to capture their first ever Stanley Cup championship in franchise history. Unfortunately, it just was not meant to be as they ended up losing the opener 3-2 against the 8-seeded Montreal Canadiens. Let's just say that the Capitals have put together a 3-1 stranglehold on the Canadiens. However, that was as good as it got for the Capitals as Yaroslav Halak was a brick wall, limiting the Capitals to only one goal in each of the last 3 games. In that process, Washington was outscored 8-3 and the Capitals were a horrendous 1-for-32 on the power play. Some say there are some redeeming factors in that series. One of them happens to be that the Grade A finished with 10 points in 7 games and Washington went on to win the Stanley Cup 8 years later. However, hockey experts like myself will never forget the colossal collapse. Number 2. Coming in at number 2 is the 2022-23 Boston Bruins. If you watched my Stanley Cup playoff prediction show back in 2023, the Boston Bruins had set several records that year, including becoming the fastest team to reach 80 points in their 45th game, surpassing the 79-80 Philadelphia Flyers. And on top of that, in March of that year, they became the fastest team to have reached the 100-point plateau in their 60th game, surpassing the 1976-77 Montreal Canadiens record at 62 games. And most of all, their 65 wins on the regular season surpassed the 95-96 Detroit Red Wings and the 18-19 Tampa Bay Lightning. We will get into that later. Not only did they win the President's Cup that year, but they carried a 3-1 series lead against the underdog Florida Panthers. Unfortunately, much like the 2009-10 Washington Capitals, the Boston Bruins squandered a 3-1 series lead, and the underdog Florida Panthers made a deep playoff run. This would also be the last playoff game for both David Krejci and Patrice Bergeron as they all announced their retirement in the offseason. And the number one most stunning early playoff exit is the 2018-19 Tampa Bay Lightning. That's right. Much was expected from the Lightning when they finished first overall in the league standings that year, especially when they finished with an overall record of 62, 16-4, with Nikita Kucherov, Steven Stamkos, and Braden Point ranking 1, 9, and 12th in league scoring, respectively. Get this, the Lightning went on a franchise-best 10-game winning streak from February 9th to the 27th. That winning streak would be surpassed 1 year later. Heading into the playoffs that year, they were matched against the 8th place Columbus Blue Jackets. The Lightning were seen by several analysts as the overwhelming favorites to prevail in the series, having won all 3 regular season games against the Blue Jackets, outscoring them 18-3. In the playoffs, the Lightning only held the lead just once, and that was during the opening game in which they would lose, having squandered a 3-0 lead. Basically speaking, the Blue Jackets swept the series in a stunning fashion instead, in what was considered by several hockey experts as the biggest upset in the history of sports. Much like number 3, there is some redeeming factors in this series. For starters, Andrei Vasilevskiy became the first goalie for the Lightning to win the Vezina Trophy for the league's best goalie. And on top of that, Nikita Kucherov became the first player since Hall of Famer Marty St. Louis to win the Art Ross Award as the league's top point getter, as well as the Hart Memorial Award as the league's MVP. More importantly, the Lightning would get revenge from their loss, and they would win the Stanley Cup in 2020 and 2021, respectively. This concludes my top 5 countdown list for the biggest upset in the National Hockey League Stanley Cup Playoffs. What did you think of them? Did you wish these teams did much better in the postseason? Absolutely. Also, is there another story you would like me to tell? Let me know in the comment box below, and I will see you next time.